So can anyone remind us exactly where we were up to, what page number, at least in this book here?
So Rabbi Allouche, I believe that,
yes.
And please correct me, anyone, if you don't think this is where we were, page 87 at the bottom. I believe that the last sentence was the last sentence of the last paragraph. So the new paragraph starting clearly, with the word clearly at the very, very bottom of page 87.
Okay,
and
thank you.
64 in this book.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
117 in the orange book.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So 117 in the orange book, 64 in the white copies, I would say, and 87 in this off-white copy right here, bottom of the page. So we're in the midst of the chapter that speaks of the human image. And basically, we've been speaking about the dichotomy found within the human being. Because on the one hand, as we mentioned, the human being is half an angel. On the other hand, he's half an ape, as the Talmud points out. And we really, at every moment of the day, every single moment of the day, we have the choice to act divinely, like our angel side, or to act, God forbid, like our animalistic side, like our ape side. And one of the tools that Rabbi Steinsaltz speaks about to help us make the right choice at every moment of the day is to simply come to the awareness and remember that we are not, as we put it, or as Rabbi Steinsaltz puts it often, not necessarily in this book, but I've heard him speak about this often, that to come to the awareness again that we are not human beings in spiritual experiences, living spiritual experiences in this world, but we are spiritual beings living in a human experience. And so far that we remember that we are essentially spiritual, essentially therefore good, essentially divine, then it will be easier also to make the right decisions that really resonate with the divinity within. That's why we said, just as a matter again of introduction to the words that we're about to study, but that's why we said, that explains why when we do something good, we feel good about it. It resonates deeply. Why? Because it resonates with who we truly are, with our deepest core. And on the opposite side, God forbid, if we do something bad, it feels terrible, at least the first time, and the second time we do it, if you repeat it time and time again, then you lose the connection with your core. That's really the biggest damage that sins do. Not so much an outer damage, but an inner damage. A damage of disconnecting your essential divine core with your outer self. But at first, when you do something bad, it also feels terrible, embarrassed, you're in pain. Why? Because your core does not, your core that which is essentially good, fundamentally divine, cannot resonate with this bad thing. I think we used the example a long time ago of if you're completely healthy, say you went on a 30-day health diet, and after those 30 days you eat a piece of pizza, your body will reject it immediately. Why? Because it's been healthy for 30 days. So same year, if you do something bad and you're generally healthy, something, it doesn't resonate. Something in you doesn't resonate because you're essentially good, essentially divine. Now, if you repeat it time and time again and you become unhealthy, then when you eat that piece of pizza, your body won't have that same reaction. Because again, you will have immersed it into such bad habits. But again, all this points to the idea that we are spiritual beings in a human experience, that we are essentially divine. And that awareness in and of itself allows us and helps us make the right choices at every moment of the day when we have to choose between our ape side, God forbid, or our divine side on the other hand. That's the general idea here communicated in the human image in Rabbi Steinsaltz's book. Again, we'll continue here at the bottom of page 87, page 64 in the white book, or 118, was it? Yeah, 118 in the orange books. Okay.
I'm sorry, 117. 117.
Thank you, 117. Thank you. 117 in orange books. All right. Does anyone want to read? Clearly the divine representation. Does anyone want to read? Please.
I can go for it.
Go for it. Joseph, please. All the way from
Okay.
Your voice will sound better than any of ours because you're speaking from Jerusalem. It's carried by holiness. Go ahead.
Clearly, the divine representation in man is far from complete. Neither the body nor the soul of man faithfully expresses the supreme essence, and yet man, in all his spiritual and physical aspects, is to be viewed as a symbolic order oriented to the order of sovereignty in the world, the order of the 10 Sephirot of the world of emanation.
Right. So what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying, again, all these words are very Kabbalistic and deep. But what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying is that it's up to man to complete the work, almost to paraphrase the ethics of our fathers that says that it's up to man to complete the work. In other words, it's not completely up to you to finish the work, but you have no right to free yourself from working, from trying to at least to complete it. And what this is saying is that, yes, so now recognizing that we are spiritual beings in human experiences, we recognize at the same time that because we are spiritual beings, we have spiritual work to do. We have a partnership that we belong to, partnership with God. And God expects us to partner with him to bring this divinity, to bring heaven down to earth, each in our own way, of course. If you recognize that you're a spiritual being, then it automatically adds upon you and on your shoulders a responsibility, not just being divine, because that's who you already are, but also of acting divine, of doing his divine work. Because again, you're spiritual. If you were just an animal, then we can't expect anything of you. You're an animal. But we're not. We're spiritual, and therefore we expect spiritual actions too. And those spiritual actions come to, in a way, to complete the work of God. Raquel, I see you raising your hand, but I just want to emphasize this point by quoting yet again the Talmud that speaks of the sixth day of creation in the terms of Vayechula Shamayim Va'aretz. We said in the Kiddush of Friday night that God completed the creation, and then he looks at his creation. He turns back. This is all in that paragraph that we say during the Kiddush, and then that paragraph ends with Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God created to do. The Talmud says, what does it mean to do? Just end it there. Asher bara Elohim, all this creation that God created. What does it mean, Asher bara Elohim la'asot, that God created to do? And the Talmud points out that yes, God created this creation, but it's imperfect. It's up to us to bring that perfection to his imperfect creation. He left it imperfect for us to make it perfect. He could have created it perfectly, but then we would have found ourselves in some heaven and we would have been all robots like the angels. God wanted us to partner with him, and therefore he left the world a little bit imperfect. And then la'asot, that extra word, alludes to our duty to then again complete each. That's what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here, that the divine representation in man is far from complete. It's then up to our deeds, our actions, to come and complete that divine representation. Yes, Raquel, you had a question.
I think I forgot it, but okay, so are we being commanded to complete this, or is it a choice, or is it just, are we born with that? Because some people do not complete God's creation. They're evil, or they aren't good people. Right. So have they chosen to be this way, or I don't quite get that.
No, look, to answer the first part of your question, yes, it's the duty of every single one of us, every single human being, to act spiritually, not just be spiritually, but act spiritually and perfect the world each in their own way. Some people, now, the second part of your question, I'll answer this way. Obviously, we are created differently, and therefore we have different strengths and different weaknesses. Some people's strength is to perfect the world with kind deeds. Some people are not necessarily kind, and therefore maybe their way of perfecting the world is through meditation and bringing that holiness through contemplation, through writing about God's wonders. Some people have other strengths. Maybe their strength is with technology. You can spread a lot of goodness with technology. They're not necessarily peoples, but that strength. Everyone has their own strength. So we each have to perfect it each in our own way. Now, yes, you're right. There are some evil people, but like you alluded to, that was a choice people made. The more you do, the more we become evil. Some people do so much evil that they've become evil. And it's very, very hard for the person then to reconnect to that initial responsibility of doing spiritual, not just being spiritual. I point to what what Picasso once said. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but it's one of my favorite lines of Pablo Picasso, the famous artist, who was once asked if all children are born artists. He said, yes, of course they are. Every child is an artist. But the question is if they can remain artists once they grow. That was his response. And it's true, we're all born good. We're all born divine. The question is if we can remain divine as we grow. What does that depend on? Depends on our choices, each and every day. Are we going to act divine or not? If yes, then we keep that goodness and we enhance it in us and in the world through those divine actions. So absolutely, some people unfortunately become so evil through their evil deeds that it's hard for them to shake that off eventually and return to their raison d'être, as they say in French, their reason of being. So that's that. But we have to keep in mind that really we are given the tremendous responsibility yet privilege of partnering with God in completing his creation. And, when the creation will be completed, that's when Mashiach comes. We've spoken about Mashiach, which is a very difficult concept to internalize because it's the unknown. But what is Mashiach? Mashiach is not just some magic and some voodoo or some abracadabra. Not at all. Mashiach is the completion of man's work in this world. Once we've all taken that responsibility seriously and done spiritual work each in our own way, according to our own unique purpose in life, then we've perfected the world all together. And then the stage is ready for the next level of this world, where it will be filled with divine knowledge, as the prophet writes about, as Maimonides writes about. And then the consciousness of man will be therefore elevated. That's when Mashiach will come. So really, each time we are doing a good deed, and it's a very different way of looking at it, but it's the Kabbalistic way of looking at it. This is a Kabbalah class. Think about this way. Each time you do a good deed, you're not just doing something nice. Yes, good deeds are nice. Each time you do a good deed, you're not just impacting just one person or two people or whatever it is. Each time you're doing a good deed, you're bringing the world this much closer to its final perfection and therefore redemption. So you're impacting the entire world on a cosmic level. Really, that's what Kabbalah teaches. Each time we do a good deed, again, the world's perfection comes even closer. Yes, Nachum.
Rabbi Allouche, nice to see you.
Great to see you too.
I wanted to say that the Messiah concept, if you call it that way, you can say that basically when a person leaves us for the next life, whatever it might be, it basically, Messiah arrived to him. So the next stage for him is actually the next world. Therefore, the next world is better than this life over here, and it is the next stage, and not in this life.
So okay. So then the question, then I would ask you this question. Fine, I understand what you're saying. And what you're basically saying is that Mashiach is not an existence that's part of this physical world. It's an existence that's part of the spiritual world. And when we die and our soul is elevated to that world of spiritual consciousness, that's when Mashiach really arrives for each of us.
It's personal to each of us.
Right. So then why the need for the third temple? Why the need for all the physicalities, all the great promises of the prophets, where
because it's always about the future, about the next generation. Life is not about yourself only. It's about what you're leaving behind. So that's why we need to have a concept of continuation. And that's why we have to keep praying and doing for the third temple.
Yeah. So, but okay, fine. So I just want to develop this point because I think it's very important. It's very much connected to the human image here. Look, there are two ways of looking at perfecting this world, like we're speaking about. One way is that we're perfecting our souls, but I don't believe that soul of ours needs perfection. That soul is already perfect. It's sent to this world for it to perfect this world, the physical world itself. Otherwise, it wouldn't be sent to this world. Now, I think that's the second level of perfection, where even a very materialistic world can turn into a spiritual one. And in a way, to me, that's what Mashiach really is. Yes, you're right. Maybe Mashiach on some level has arrived in the world to come. But God's emphasis, he sends the world's not there, the souls not there. He sends the souls here to this world. He wants us to take an apple and say a blessing on it. He wants us to take this table right here and study Torah on it. He wants us to focus on this physical world. All this alludes to what? To the idea that God is interested in turning this world into a messianic world. Otherwise, again, he would have left our souls alone in the world to come. But the fact that he's so obsessed with the physical world, I think points to the idea that there is yet another level of Mashiach, not just the Mashiach that's up there, but a Mashiach that again becomes very, very tangible in physicality. And in a way, I think that's why we are put in physical bodies. That's why we have physical mystic challenges. Because God wanted to come down, he did on Mount Sinai, by the way, to come down from the heavens, come down. Vayered Hashem on Har Sinai, it says. He came down on the mountain and impact this physical world more than anything else. I just want to just emphasize this point by just sharing an anecdote. Again, this is the author that we're speaking about, Rabbi Steinsaltz himself, the author of the 13 Petalled Rose, my dear mentor. And I remember that, you know, he could be very harsh. So you got to keep that as a context. He could be very, very harsh with people. But I remember that one day he, I have to bring this up or not, but it was in San Francisco. I was with him in San Francisco. And there's two anecdotes I want to share about Rabbi Steinsaltz relating to this very point. But it fits with some of the people in San Francisco, as you can imagine. But he was giving a lecture. And at the end of the lecture, this woman stands up and says, Rabbi Steinsaltz, I may have shared this specific anecdote before, but Rabbi Steinsaltz, I have a question for you. How can I feel God and how can I come close to God? And Rabbi Steinsaltz brilliantly responded. He said, well, you asked two separate questions. How can you feel God? Jokingly, he said, possibly milligrams of LSD will help. but how can you come close to God? You have 613 ways to come close to God, including, of course, the 600 mitzvot, which are very physical, except maybe for two, praying and studying Torah. Pick one of them and you'll come close to God. In other words, the way to come close to God is necessarily through physicality. That's one. The second thing was much harsher. A rabbi was there in San Francisco and he had a private lunch with Rabbi Steinsaltz, and they were speaking about the Messiah and they were speaking about the third temple. And the rabbi was saying that this third temple idea, he believes, alludes to the temple of the heart, that there won't be a third temple in Jerusalem where we will all go to and worship. It's probably right here. That's what the third, and Rabbi Steinsaltz didn't like that answer at all. First, because it goes against the actual verses, but he said to him, you know, it sounds like you've never, and please don't take this the wrong way, you have to know Rabbi Steinsaltz to understand this. So think of the context of being harsh, of being a seeker of truth, of not filtering what he has to say if it's a matter of truth. That's Rabbi Steinsaltz. But he says to this rabbi, he says, it sounds like you've never made love before. Because you're speaking about this platonic love that we have with God through the temple, and it's all nice and it's in our hearts. But God has never expressed his love in this world, at least, in such a way. Every big spiritual concept is attached to a materialistic concept. Whether it's love or whether it's our connection with God, that love connection, that's attached again to a temple. That's the way God speaks. That's the way God works. And therefore, that temple that you think is in the heart is a nice concept, but it really does not fit the way God thinks, the way God works. That to every big emotion, big spiritual sense, there is a physical sense attached to it. So that's just another perspective on the Messiah. But thank you for sharing that, Nachum.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Just, by the way, I just want to say and be as practical as possible. I think this is also very encouraging, because for many people, it's hard to all of a sudden meditate and to all of a sudden fly into an ecstasy, but that's not what God asks of us. If you give tzedakah, even if you don't feel like it, that coin that you gave is the most spiritual action you can do. That it's very comforting. I think it makes it so much more accessible, so much more relevant and easy in a way. You can connect to God and perfect this world through physical actions, even if your emotions are not necessarily there. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll continue.
Rabbi, I do have a question. So if we do a mitzvot and that cumulatively works towards taking us to the eventual tikkun olam, if you will, if we don't do if we have an opportunity to do a mitzvot, is that subtracted from the cumulative positive mitzvot? Is an evil act subtracted from that?
So if you don't do it and you sin instead, or if you don't, I don't understand the question.
So as the cumulative mitzvot start to accumulate, if a person does a negative, doesn't do a mitzvot, or they do an evil act, is that detract from the
world in reverse? Right, that's a good question. That's a very good question. And Maimonides actually speaks about it. Maimonides gives another metaphor, which is brilliant. And he says that a person should, each time a person is presented with a mitzvah to do, then a person should think that the entire world is like a scale. And maybe that mitzvah will tip the scale that he's about to do and bring the world its ultimate redemption. And you're asking if one does a sin, does it tip the scale the other way? So the answer that Maimonides gives is no. The world of goodness and the world of bad are disconnected completely. They speak to each other. It's two different things. Now, through our evil deeds, we can affect our own selves. We can affect the world. But the analogy I would give, it's not the analogy Maimonides gives, again, that addresses the question, but the analogy I would give is I don't know, maybe, I don't know, what is it? Water to your cholent on Shabbos. If you make cholent on Shabbos, fine, your cholent, nah, the mitzvahs are the food itself. You make, whatever you make, I don't know if it's such a good analogy. Peas, beans, meat, potatoes, whatever you add. What's that Ashkenazic thing called? The intestines? Anyone? Kishke. Kishke, that's right. You can add kishke. You can add all of that stuff. That's the mitzvahs. And then you can add water. If it's going to be less burnt, more burnt, that's the water. It doesn't affect the world that much. But we have the food. We have to work on the substance. And the reason I'm using this analogy is because really mitzvahs are substantial. That's the light. It's the light we add. Evil really has no substance. That's why evil is not eternal. That's why we can rectify evil, Kabbalistically speaking. Evil can end. If I do teshuvah, all my evil deeds have changed. Evil has no real substance. It's like that water. And so it has some impact, but really no impact on the scale of the world, on the food itself. If I answer that right. Okay, fine. Thank you for that comment, Barry. Any other questions?
One, Rabbi. This is Dan Jordan.
Yeah, hi, Dan. Yeah.
First of all, it's good to see you without the neck brace. So
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Baruch Hashem. Yes.
Yeah, it's like seeing it. It's like seeing your favorite dog without the cone head thing. It's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I meant that with no disrespect.
No, not at all. I love dogs.
Although after the Ashkenazi Kishka comment, maybe.
No problem. No problem. Rabbi Steinsaltz, Rabbi Steinsaltz, he says, I love creatures on 4 legs. If 2 legs, maybe not. I'm good with that.
if we're indeed spiritual beings having a human experience,
yeah,
it would seem that can't be by chance. That's by God's choice. The soul, as you said, is already perfect.
right.
So if the soul is sent to this realm to have a human experience, the soul is sent to mix with the imperfect,
Right.
and then to do. In other words, it's not, the soul has the intent, but the physicality gives the soul the ability to do, which the soul doesn't have absent the physicality.
Yeah.
So it's as if, you know, if a person were to suddenly find themselves in the midst of the ocean and there was an island off in the distance,
yeah,
it would be a waste of time for them to meditate on how did I get into this ocean. Their job is to swim.
Right.
Their job is to swim to the island. It's not what of intention. It's not what is the philosophical notion behind me suddenly being in the ocean. It's I've now got to do.
Right.
And it would seem that that's the imperative in everything that the rabbi is discussing, that specifically the soul is meant to be in this imperfect environment so that it has the ability to express itself physically.
Absolutely, which is very hard for the soul, because the soul is entirely spiritual. It doesn't understand, doesn't speak the language of the physical world. On the other hand, it's placed in the physical world, not just to understand it, but to change it.
Yes.
And it's very hard. You're absolutely right. And the way to do it is through deed. We've spoken about this so many times, but indeed, Judaism is not a feel-good religion, as we've said. It's a do-good religion. It's all about deed. And no matter what the intention is, I know we put a lot of thought on the importance of intention and of emotions. Not Judaism. It's fascinating. I always point this out. It's fascinating to note. To me, it's fascinating that the Torah, which is our GPS, our bread and butter, so to speak, does not speak emotions. I would love to know how Isaac felt as he was being led by his father to be killed. And eventually, thank God, he was saved at the last. I would have loved to feel how Joseph felt when he was kidnapped by Egyptian merchants. I would have loved to feel how Abraham felt when he was told, go, leave your land. Now go to a new land. It doesn't tell us. What emotions did he have? Rebellion, of sadness, of joy? No one knows. But why? Why does the Torah omit emotions? Because it's making a point that at the end of the day, the Abrahams and the Moseses and the Western world are not about emotions, they're about deeds. Our lives are about deeds, not about emotions. Yeah. And that's
just taking that a bit further, it's almost as if the soul cannot find its full expression unless it mixes with the non-divine and affects it.
I like that. Yes, that I would agree with that. Absolutely. Right. Now affects it, I would go a step further, affects it, making it divine.
Yes.
And then the soul finds harmony with this physical world.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Brilliant, very nice. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we'll... All right. So we'll continue here on page 88, at least in these books here. Does anyone want to read one of the definitions of the name man?
I'll read, Rabbi.
Please,
okay. One of the definitions of the name man or Adam is like Domeh, to the Supreme. For like God, man creates the worlds in the image of himself. His physical form is the assemblage of its several parts, also constitutes a system that is a sort of model of the inner network of all worlds. The structure of man is a paradigm of the structure of the worlds. It is the key to the order of the mitzvot, and it is also the configuration that symbolizes the system of relationships among the worlds. All of the organs of man correspond to higher essences in other worlds. The general structure of the human body is homologous with the order of the 10 Sfirot. Every part of the body of a man being congruous with a particular sephirah.
Right. So that's also one of the most fundamental Kabbalistic thoughts, and that is Adam, which refers to human beings. We're called Adam, a man, but it's not a masculine man. It's just Adam means both masculine and feminine. Adam also means to be similar. It comes from Dimayon or Dome. Adam, that's because we are similar to God. The Kabbalists also speak about the combination two words in the word Adam. You think about this. Adam is spelled Aleph Dalet Mem in Hebrew. If you split the word into two, you have Aleph on one hand and Dam on the other hand. Aleph means God. Aleph is the numerical value of one, like the oneness of God. The letter A very often represents God. And then you have Dam, which means blood. Adam, this man, is a combination of God coming into blood, coming into a body, into physicality. That's what Adam is. But there's a God in there, and there's a God that turns this entity as an entity that is domeh, that is, again, similar, that resembles God himself. I think that every being, in a way, resembles God. They say that the eyes are the windows to soul. I would say the body is the window to God, based on this idea. Again, Adam means it resembles God. Now, how can it find harmony, this Aleph and this Dam, this oneness and this blood? By working together. When the soul comes and impacts the body of to turn it into a channel for God's work in this world, each in our own way again, then we are truly resembling God. Then we are truly fulfilling our purpose, turning the body into something divine. We spoke about this during the soul class, I think this week, last week on Sunday morning, but maybe at a different time. But that's why, maybe we spoke about this last class. The righteous, and this, but the righteous are, when they die, bodies remain intact. And the stories about how cemeteries had uprooted in Russia because they were building a highway, and when they came to certain graves and had to move bodies, they found these that were dead 150 years already, intact as if they had just died in the morning. Because why? Those righteous people, what they actually did completely is they were able to create this complete harmony between the Aleph and the Dam, the soul and the body, that they turn the body into a holy entity. And therefore that body, because it's so fine, it can't disintegrate. That's really what this is saying. Now, every part of the body corresponds to a different sephirah, a different attribute. The righteous know exactly how to channel each limb of the body according to its own action. There's a book like that. There's Sefer HaCharedim. I would recommend you to look it up. Sefer HaCharedim, it's called. And it's a book with basically all of the mitzvot of the Torah, 13 mitzvot, and allocates them to the different parts of our body. So you have mitzvot that belong to the hand, like tzedakah, give that with your hand. And mitzvot that belong to the legs. When you walk to synagogue, run to doing a good deed. That's mitzvot that belong to the leg. There's mitzvot that belong to the mouth. You just focus on the face. The mouth speaking positive language or not negative language. Mitzvah that belongs to the mouth. There's mitzvahs that belong to the eyes. There's looking at people's positive sides, judging people favorably. That's eyes. There's mitzvahs that belong to the ears. We have to sift our hearing and listening too. There's things that we ought to listen to, but we should not listen to. There's mitzvot, and the more we act each and every limb, it's mitzvah again. The greater this harmony between body and soul. I read that I forget there was some Hasidic Rebbe who was suffering from leg pains, and at one point he said, "I'm suffering from leg pains because I have problems in faith." Why? Because legs support us like faith supports us. Again, the legs represent faith. That's the mitzvah that's parallel to it. And I'm having leg pains maybe because I don't have much faith. Now you have to be a Kabbalist, you have to be a righteous man to be able to say that about yourself. Not you come and say, "Oh, you're suffering from eye pains because you're not looking at people favorably. I don't know if anyone can make those calculations. But again, it comes to make the point that everyone can allocate certain mitzvahs to certain, and thereby create this complete harmony. Joseph, you raised your hand, and Nachum, I see you also asked the question. Joseph, yes, please.
So I was wondering if we can connect this also with the Omer, because on the Omer, we're dealing with a different aspect of a sephira, of the sephiras every week, every day. So
yeah,
how is there a way to connect that?
So you're right. We spoke about happiness hour class today. You're right. And, you know, we are told to count the days. And Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who was the author of the Tanya, and Rabbi Shneur says a commentary on the Tanya too, but he speaks of the word Tem Lachem, which means, and you should count for yourself that every day in the Omer between Passover and Shavuot in a different light. He says Usfartem comes from the word sapir or sapphire, which means to illuminate. And the way he interprets that commandment is not only should we count every day, but live every day. Bring light and meaning into every day, every moment of the day. The way I think, Joseph, that's very much connected to what we're saying. We have to light
and I was referring more to like how on every day we count a certain sephira, like for y'all, it's still Yesod of Gevura.
Right, you're right. Every day is its own sephira, as which what Rabbi Steinsaltz is speaking about. Sephira is the attributes of God. So it's the attribute of kindness, attribute of justice, and so on and so forth. Every day has its own work that we have to work on. You're right. Hey, Rabbi Simon Jacobson is here for the Soul Conference, and I would encourage you to get that booklet of his. Google it.
I ordered it.
What is it called? Remind me, Joseph.
Let me just check real quick.
So he has a whole booklet that, yeah, you know what? I think it's so important that I need to Google it myself. I'll add it to the chat here.
I found it. It's called Counting the Omer, 49 Steps to Personal Refinement According to the Jewish Tradition.
Very good. Very good. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to attach, thank you, Joseph. I'm going to attach the Amazon link to that. But yeah, thank you for mentioning this also, because indeed, so what he's done, that he's taken every day of the Omer and attribute up to the day. It's given us a guide of how we can work an attribute. The following exactly we're speaking about here in the 13 Petalled Rose.
His website also has there's an app you can download from him, just called My Omer, and it gives you like a little, like it tells you what the sephiras are for the day, it gives you a meditation, a journal activity to do.
Good.
So
beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It doesn't even cost anything because I have it. I get it every day.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And there's what's the app called? Do you know?
My Omer, like one word, My Omer.
Okay, fine. All right, I'm gonna include that also. That's the Zoom. In our text right here, I found the link in our chat. All right, there you go. You can meaningfullife.com. You'll find it over there on the home page. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Chana, you have the actual. I saw it. You were showing it to everybody. Yeah. Anna Perlo is going to show. This is how it looks like, by the way.
Yeah. Can you see it?
There it is. Yeah. We have that.
It's nice to have the hard copy. I like that.
Yeah. That's exactly what it looks like. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, beautiful, very good. Nachum, I want to relate to what you said. You're right. The Torah, what we spoke about before, the Torah doesn't speak much about feelings. It speaks about motions. You're right, motions, not emotions though. Motions like energy and situation and circumstances and context, absolutely. But the feelings are not there. Fortunately and unfortunately, because really, I mean, it will make the story so much juicier. Think about this. But, okay, it's making a point again that we are deed-oriented. Good. All right. You're right. So we have, again, sephiras for each and every day, sephiras for every limb of the body. In general, you may be familiar with the Kabbalistic chart of the 3 intellectual attributes that are at the top of the chart, and then the 7 attributes that follow, almost like a human image or drawing, so to speak. You have the head, and then you have the rest. But in general, if you follow that, that's the way it is with the human body. The mind represents the 3. There are 10 sefirot altogether. Just to clarify here what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying, in Kabbalah we have 10 sefirot, 3 intellectual ones, which are Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, usually translated as wisdom, intelligence, and understanding. I hope these are correct translations. And then you have 7 emotional attributes. And they follow again the different sides of the body. The right side represents kindness, chesed. The left side represents justice, which is gevura. You have the middle side, which is the middle road in general, the moderated road. And that's tiferet, which means beauty. When you merge justice and kindness together, you have something beautiful, tiferet. There you go. Thank you. Anna, you're on top of your game today. That's how the chart looks like. If you look at Perlo's right there. Thank you so much. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Some 13 Petalled Rose books, in fact, have it also. I think the newer edition has it, not this edition. But some of the 13 Petalled Rose editions have it. And again, and you continue on and on. You have Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut, which are the 4 additional attributes, again, that relate to the different parts of the body. But again, the big idea, friends, is simply that the soul comes down here in order to create harmony between the spiritual and the physical. And where does it start? It starts here. That's where Gandhi got it from when he said, be the change that you want to see in the world. It starts right here with harmonizing our own self between the soul and the body, our own soul and our body. One of the ways to do that, again, is by figuring out which parts of the body follow which sephira, which mitzvah, and then making sure that each part does its own mitzvah. Guys showing us.
I'm going to say on page 171. On page 171.
Oh, thank you.
There it is.
There you go. Page 171. Thank you. In this edition, you can follow.
In this version, it's on page 131.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So there you go. There you have the chart. Don't need to elaborate on it too much. But again, it's also divided in this chart, 171, into the different parts of the body. Thank you, Gilad, for that. Very good. Okay. And when we complete that chart in our own selves, then that's when we have the perfect Adam, the perfect Dimayon, the perfect resemblance to God himself. You know, there's a statement in the Talmud that has always been quite enigmatic, but the Talmud says that if your teacher looks like the angel of God, then accept Torah from him. If not, don't accept Torah from him. In other words, if yes, then learn Torah from him. If not, then don't learn Torah from him. That's why I encourage you not to learn Torah from me, because I certainly don't look like the angel of God. But I'm trying for you not to learn Torah from me, because that would be futile. I'm trying to teach you Torah from someone that does look like an angel, Rabbi Steinsaltz himself. In a way, you see him, even he looks like an angel. There you go. So that's who we learn Torah from. But in any case, what does this mean? How do we know what angels look like? To go deeper into that Talmudic statement. Malach Hashem Tzevakot, that's the expression of the Talmud. An angel of God's army. How do we know how that looks like? I mean, so how can I differentiate between the right teacher and the wrong teacher? And the answer again is based exactly on what we're saying. What is an angel? An angel is someone who has complete harmony with God. He's entirely divine. So if someone's life is entirely divine, if someone has managed to turn his body into a channel of divinity, that's a teacher to learn from. If someone has his soul on one hand and his body on the other hand, and they don't coordinate whatsoever, that's not someone to learn from. say that the students of Aristotle once found him doing something atrocious, very immoral. And they went to Aristotle and they said to him, how can you do such a thing? You taught us not to do these things. And Aristotle said, what I teach you in the classroom is one thing. What I do in my personal life is another thing. But that's exactly what someone that does not look like an angel looks like. Judaism again teaches that we have to have complete harmony between, what we do in our personal lives and what we teach, or the way we inside and the way we are on the outside. That harmony between the soul and the body. That's what really this Talmudic statement means. And I really believe, I don't know, some people have the eye for it, but I really believe that divinity then eventually shines. I'll tell you this, I was just 7 years old when I first I had the immense privilege of meeting the Lubavitcher Rebbe 3 times. Once when I was 7, the other one was when I was 11, and the other one was 13 or 14. And the first time was when I was 7, and I walked into 770 Eastern Parkway. That's the headquarters of the Chabad movement. And as I walked in, the Rebbe was walking towards his seat to pray the afternoon prayers. And I'll forget, I was just 7 years old. But I'll never forget that I saw the Rebbe. It's like there was a huge light around him. I don't know how to explain it, a white light around him. And it's something that I perceived even as a 7-year-old. When people have turned their bodies into divine channels, it shows. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't see it. But you have an eye for it, and you can actually see the light. And it's true, right, as someone is pointing out here, it's true for every human being, not just for Jews. It's true for everyone. When they're able to turn their body into divine channels, then it shows, that light emanates. Okay, any comments? No? Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please, Linda.
So I don't know what angels look like.
Neither do I.
So I choose you.
I don't know if you're making the right choice, but let's choose Rabbi Steinsaltz. I don't know how angels look like.
It doesn't matter what you think.
No, thank you.
It matters how I perceive you.
Thank you. I'll prove it to you. I don't have wings. Oh,
I didn't expect you to be an angel.
all right. Okay,
I expect you to be a teacher.
Okay, thank you. Good. Raquel, yes.
Well, I have to agree with her because
Please. Okay.
you're one of the most inspiring rabbis
Thank you. Okay, well, now, thank you. I appreciate it.
Let us finish, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you.
It's embarrassed.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna.
know, and I apologize for embarrassing you. I really do, but I think everyone agrees that you're wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's not, thank you. Appreciate it. But again, just trying to channel, I will tell you that there's a video I'm going to attach to this, if I can find it, but there's an incredible, it's in Hebrew, unfortunately, so it doesn't have subtitles, but it's a video that was published about Rabbi Steinsaltz and what he tries to do, what he tries to achieve. And I'm going to try to find it here. If I can't find it, I can't find it. But I want to tell you what it's about. And just a wondrous video, one of the most touching videos of Rabbi Stein called Tovanot. If you Google it in Hebrew, Tovanot, you'll find the YouTube. But there he tries to explain what he's trying to do. He says that when he was just 23 years old, I think it was, or maybe younger, he was given the task to teach some of the brightest minds in Israel, which included university professors and also the president of Israel, President Shazar. He had to teach them a Tanya class. And very often he was intimidated. He said, who am I? I'm just a pisher. And I have to teach all these people that are twice, 3 times my age. And then he came to the conclusion, he said, one second, they're not coming to hear me. They're coming to hear the Torah that is true. The Torah was given 3,000 years ago. So really, I'm 3,023 years old. So I'm much older than them, really so much older than them. I'm no pisher. I'm 3,023, and they are maybe 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. So I'm the one that's oldest. But I think that is so brilliant. I'm going to try to make it clear, everyone. And I think that's so brilliant because in a way it teaches us exactly what that angel looks like. It's not someone who's trying to come and teach you from his ego and from his way of looking at the world. Quite the opposite. He's trying to just be a channel of God's word, of the Torah itself. It's not about him at all. That's what it's about. Okay.
Would you say that Moses was an angel?
In a way, yeah, Moses was an angel, but being at the time, just like we have, he's just very in tune with his angelic self. Just like, again, those teachers. Now, there are people, very few. Moses died, and we don't know where he's buried. So, but like Elijah the prophet, he, in a way, there's that image of him turning into an angel at the end of his life, that Allah b'sa'ara shamayma, as it says. He ascended to the heavens. And by ascending to the heavens, he was able to, in a way, turn his body into an angelic state. Now, whether he turned into an angel or not, I don't know, but that's the image at least. Very few people are like that.
So is there a difference between an angel and a prophet?
Sure. The major difference is not so much in their resemblance to God, because they both resemble God, but the major difference is in the way they achieve their resemblance. That's why in a way human beings, even Kabbalistically, and by the way, you're right, I'm going to try to mute all, because there is that background noise. So that's it, muting all, thank you. But so it's the way they achieve that holiness, the way they achieve that angelic state. The angels really didn't have to work for it. And because they didn't have to work for it, really they're on a lower level than human beings. Kabbalistically, we are on a higher level than angels. We come from the world of creation, which is the second highest world. Angels come from the world of formation, which is the third highest world. The reason for that is because we had to work for it. We had to work to achieve that state. And when you work to achieve that state, then of course it gives you much greater elevation. You find that in regular life. When you work for a certain achievement, that achievement is so much more a part of you and so much more illuminated than an achievement that you don't have to work for. It's like a story they tell about some Russians who, at the fall of the Iron Curtain, they found that people were so poor that the old Russian soldiers who really achieved medals through sweat, blood, and tears were selling the medals. So some young Russians started to buy these medals, and then to trick everyone, they would walk in the streets with those medals on the uniform. Now compare a man like that just bought a medal and he's wearing it, to a man who really achieved it and he was wearing it after blood, sweat, and tears. Can you compare the two? That's a way we can compare human beings to angels. Human beings are the people who really went to war. We really had to give of their blood, sweat, and tears to achieve those medals. Angels receive that automatically. So yes, they have those medals, that's great. But they're not as close to the level of holiness and divinity of human beings who really had to work for them. Good question. All right, friends, one or two more comments. Anyone?
Hi, Rabbi.
Yes,
I'm sorry I missed your first class. I had a conflict. Anyway, so is there any way to be able to see it, or is it something you have to do online? Like if I wanted to see the earlier Zoom class.
Oh, the Happiness Hour class?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're working, yes. The classes are being recorded, at least most of them. I don't deal with this side of the technology. Yaakov Pure, our Shaliach, does, and he's working on downloading them and then putting them eventually on YouTube. And they'll be under the archives of our new website, which I'm happy to share here again with everyone. And yes, I do encourage everyone to please stay in touch by going to this new website that we created specifically for this COVID-19 era, so that we can all stay in touch. There, on that website, cbtvirtualworld.com, you'll find all our classes and programs and lessons. So please, we have another class tomorrow evening, a Q&A class. You can email me any questions ahead of time, and I'll address them tomorrow night. I'll do my best to address them. I encourage you to join us for that tomorrow 6:30 p.m. each and every week. But please stay in touch through that website. Yes.
I have to share the picture again.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful. Rabbi Steinsaltz. Thank you.
The
Yeah,
angel, well, number one angel is Rabbi Allouche. This is number two.
No.
Right?
Rabbi Allouche?
Yes, Brett, please.
So
good to see you.
Good to see you too. So my question is, if you have these different levels of worlds, right? And we are in the physical world and we are working up. And as the example that you used around Moshe becoming more spiritual as time progressed and he eventually turned into an angel, does that translate to meaning that Moshe was essentially more elevated, you know, as he became an angel, and that's essentially the progression that all tzaddiks go through to become closer to Hashem? So essentially, you know, we have this animal instinct and we're having to make these decisions through our lives, you know, where we're balancing, you know, the godly soul and the animal instinct, and we're working towards becoming more angelic. Does that mean that in time we give up our animal instinct, and that is one of the steps that brings us closer to Hashem?
In a way, and I don't know if I'm answering this accurately, but in a way, I think it becomes the channel of the animal inclination, the animalistic inclination, the evil inclination, becomes easier and easier with time. Of course, the more we overcome it, the more we prevail. And the more that evil inclination understands, oh, I can't mess with this man, that's it, I'm quitting. And that's when really the body has been turned fully into that channel of God. So we become more and more angelic, and it's easier to reach that angelic state as we overcome our animalistic inclination time and time and time again, right? I would say it's like, I don't know if you've run marathons before, I'm sure many of you have, or even long distance, not marathons necessarily, but it's hard to reach that point. At one point of the marathon, you feel like quitting, gosh, I'm running out of breath. And then you reach that point, I think in Italian, it's called punta di nesta, and it's like you're on cruise control. And then you can for many more miles. You feel like your body has reached that level. In a way, I think that's the way it works. The evolution, that it's hard at the beginning and you insist and persevere, but eventually you can reach that cruise control. Even though King David, you know, King David says that he has placed sin in front of him all the time. What does that mean? It means that he has placed the ability to sin in front of him all the time. He says, even though I might think now I'm immune, now I'm in cruise control, should never fall into that oblivion, because that's when the evil inclination comes to get you. Oh, you think you're intact now? You're immune? That's when I'm coming to get you. That could lead to a state of complacency, and that's dangerous. So we also have to have that balance. Yes, Nachum.
I wanted to share something that is personal with all of you.
Yeah.
I really believe that angels, that people that become angels, the job is not done just by becoming angels. I think it's actually just started. And I know it from first hand because I was involved in my younger life in a few operations and wars defending the state of Israel. And a few of my friends lost their life, but they earned something else, especially from my personal point of view. Everywhere I go, I say that I have 4 angels guarding me, and one of them actually is in my heart and with me all the time. And I think I won't be where I am today, and I won't do what I do today without their direction, without them pushing me to do what I do. I really believe in that.
Beautiful. Nachum, that's, I agree with that fully. That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, by the way, especially in preparation for Yom HaZikaron next week. As you all know, Yom HaZikaron is the Remembrance Day for all soldiers who lost their lives to defend all of us. So no doubt, these soldiers are angelic and they accompany people like you, and I'm sure all of us. They see us our best advocate in the heavens. Yeah. Thank you, Nachum. Okay, friends. So, well, Gila, where are you? There you go. Gila, are we good for 2 weeks from now? Yes. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Excellent. Yes. All right, so let's mark it in our calendars, friends. We'll resume our class in the 13 Petalled Rose in 2 weeks from now, Wednesday in 2 weeks. I'll put in my calendar now. Also, thank you already for joining together. It's such a pleasure with being with all of you. It's really inspiring and humbling, so thank you. And again, stay in touch with our website here, because there are many more programs that I encourage you to join so that we can remain connected and give each other spiritual hugs.
Amen.
Until we can resume our physical hugs together.
Yes. Thank you, Rabbi Allouche.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank
you. All the best.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.